Hollow Knight is a big game. If you look really close, you might notice it. This means a big map with a lot of bosses scattered across it. Sometimes that means the bosses will be inconveniently far from the closest benches, you know, if you happen to perish. But how annoying are these boss runs actually? Well, let's figure that out. 46 bosses and so little time before Silksong. Also, obvious spoilers for the entirety of Hollow Knight and its 4 DLC packs. Before we start though, I'd like to clarify that this list excludes the Hall of Gods, since those are instant refights. We're also focusing on the most direct path from the nearest retry location upon death. For most fights, this means the last bench, but for others, it's a quick step back into the Dream Realm. Finally, this is simply my opinion, so feel free to let me know which placements you agree or disagree with in the comments. Number 46, the Hollow Knight. Simply put, there is nothing that can possibly damage you between the final bench and the Hollow Knight in the next room, especially if you got the Void Heart and your shade doesn't attack you. Number 45, Grey Prince Zote. The first of several dream bosses on this list that you can immediately retry. The reason this one is the least annoying of the lot is because there's no threat of falling out of the dream before you reach the fight. Number 44, Nightmare King Grim. Same story as the previous boss, the only additional annoyance is the requirement of having Grimchild to enter, wasting 2 charm notches. Number 43, White Defender. Honestly, NKG is more annoying because of needing Grimchild, but you can actually fall out of this dream by accident. Though if you fall out of this one, it must have been on purpose, because he's right there. Number 42, Troopmaster Grim. Base Grim has the same charm requirement annoyance as NKG, plus the short trip from the Dirtmouth bench, but it's still right there, with nothing dangerous in between. Number 41, Enraged Guardian. The bench for this refight is directly below it, with just a hop, skip, and jump required to reach it. So why is it above the Grim fights on the list? The shade. It always spawns in the boss room, which is already crowded from square one. Number 40, Failed Champion. Of the big 3 base game refights in the Dream Realm, this one is the easiest to not fall out of. Just Crystal Dash to the left and you're there. Number 39, Soul Tyrant. The second Dream refight that you could possibly fall out of, but there's no way to skip the few short jumps to reach the boss. Still very simple though. Number 38, Zero. Still no threat between the bench and the fight, but the run is a little bit longer. Coming from the tram is technically shorter and just as safe, but who actually uses that bench? Like for anything. Number 37, Lost Kin. The last individual dream refight with some needlessly irritating platforming to get down to it. You can drop down the left side of the area to make the trip much shorter, but timing the double jump to save yourself is still a bit tricky. Either way, you will almost certainly fall out of this dream at least once by accident. Number 36, Hornet Protector. This one has a bit of an asterisk to it. If you're coming from the Stag Station, it's super quick and safe to get back. However, if you come over the top from the Vengefly King room and don't notice the sign pointing to the station, you'll have a much longer and more annoying trip ahead of you. Number 35, Marmu. There's a much bigger asterisk for this caterpillar ghost. Like Hornet, the Stag is right there with only a couple very weak enemies between. However, many people get to this room after a lot of very painful loodle juggling and just start the fight. That's a long trek if you screw it up, so please walk past the puppy to the bench first. I beg you. Number 34, Soul Warrior. Whether it's the first one that gives you access to the rest of the sanctum, or the one behind the elegant door, both have an annoying first-time unlock, but are very easy to get back to, especially if you remember to break this elevator shaft wall. Number 33, Hornet Sentinel. Not a difficult return, but a long straightaway. Unfortunately, the slightly uneven ledges in the long room keep it from being one good C-dash. That and these inconvenient stalactites are just that slight bit of irritation. Number 32, Gruzmother. I mean, you shouldn't be dying to this boss at all, but it can happen for new players. The nearest benches are Salubras or the tram, but most people will not have access to them before fighting her, so the station it is. Not a long walk, but just a bit more effort than the previous entries. Number 31, Gorb. The great mind at the western top of the world is actually quite close to Mato's house, but the very small platforms and several smaller bugs milling about can make getting back up to him with full health a bit tedious. Number 30, Broken Vessel. A similar story to Hornet's second encounter, It's mostly just a C- long shot with a couple extra steps, but there's a couple shadow creepers and the threat of falling down into the big loop if you're not careful. Speaking of, not unlocking the shortcut for this one makes it 10 times more painful. Number 29, Nosk. The hot spring isn't too far away, but it's still a bit of a trek even with the shortcut. That, combined with him ambushing you as soon as you return, just makes it a bit more unfun than the ones below it. Number 28, Vengefly King. The closest bench is technically the station, rather than the one most people use right here, but not by much. Either way, it's a semi-tricky climb through a bunch of simple enemies. Good thing he's super simple, so the runback shouldn't be necessary. Also, you saved Zote from an early grave, so you got that to live with. Number 27, Massive Moss Charger. I love the closest bench to the meandering Mesozoic cactus. I mean the monumentally malformed clump. I mean the mega miserable cucumber. The bench aside, the walk is very middle of the road. There's a few gulkas and a moss creep, but nothing you can't just walk past without worry or care. Number 26, Fluke Marm. Get the shortcut for this one, and it's not bad. Just make sure not to fall down the second hole, and watch out for the bellfly. Then you're all good. If you don't break the shortcut, or if you fall down the second hole, get ready to have all of your senses, especially your ears, violated. Number 25, Dung Defender. Same area, same bench, but a longer, safer walk. Why put the safer one above the more dangerous one? Because it's the waterways. You can get turned around real quick. Just keep an eye out for poop on the walls, then you know you're on the right track. Number 24, No Eyes. Honestly, this runback is on par with its neighbor, the Mangled Miscarriage of Calamity. The big difference is the necessity of both the Dream Nail and the Lantern, neither of which you're likely to have when you first find this place. Oh, and the Fool Eater in this room is very likely to surprise you at least once. Number 23, False Knight. The first major progression boss in the game. The runback from the station is nothing much. It's much smarter to jump over the Husk Guard and take your time with the trio of husks right after him rather than rushing it. Number 22, The Collector. Alright, now we're getting into the more annoying ones, either by way of a long walk, tricky platforming, or treacherous enemies between the bench and the fight. Our first example is pretty tame on danger if you can avoid the bellflies. It's just a bit of a trek from King Station. Nice of him to keep our shade safe though. Number 21, Galian. Once you know the route, it's not terrible, but it can be cramped and you really have to keep moving. The Carver Hatcher won't have time to react, and the Deep Hunter's shots will likely miss. Just gotta keep moving and watch out for spikes while falling. Number 20, Brooding Moloch. For a hidden boss in the first area, this one can be tricky to reach, even with Mantis Claw. A couple very careful jumps or pogos and you should be home free. The game's nice enough to remind you of how to look down for the next bit. By the way, I'm pretty sure if you kill the weaker one in Trial 3 of the Colosseum, he shows up in Godhome, so you don't even really need to kill this one. Except, you know, Mask Shard. Number 19, Watcher Knights. For as difficult a fight as Watcher Knights tend to be for newcomers, I'm kinda surprised the bench isn't a bit closer. That said, aside from one particularly poorly placed winged sentry, there isn't much to get in your way. Number 18, Elder Hu. Talk about your forgettables. An underwhelming fight in a cornered-off part of a so-so area. Elder Hu is likely to be the warrior dream you'll have to be reminded exists by the map marker telling you that you've been to his grave. It doesn't help that the closest bench is Leg Eater, an already out-of-the-way vendor. Oh yeah, the run. Well, it's long, there's acid, a fungoon, and a couple sporgs. That's it, really. Number 17, Umu. The previous two are probably longer trips, but the consequences of scuffing your trip through the archives is much steeper with all the explosives. Take your time, don't hit the big ones, and it's honestly not that bad. Number 16, Markoth. Man, I despise this guy. Like every version, honestly. He doesn't even have the courtesy to be anywhere close to a bench. The trip from Oros is probably faster than from the Ashfall Intent, but even then, you've got to dodge several shotgun Satans and appendage knives. You'll definitely want to use Dreamgate if you have it. Number 15, Mantis Lords. This is the first one that I would argue is painfully long. Even if you unlock every shortcut through Mantis Village, the trek is just so long. Just remember, before you fight the Lords, climb the closed door and break the wall for some helpful lifeblood. Number 14, Traitor Lord. Just like his sisters, it's not really the enemies that make the run back to Traitor Lord so painful, it's the trek itself. It's around the same distance as the sisters, but the platforming is much more precise. Number 13, Crystal Guardian. Considering the mechanical nightmare that is the Crystal Peak, you'll likely be desperate for a bench when you first arrive. So isn't it evil that Team Cherry put a boss on the bench? Yes, he's far from the hardest boss, honestly he feels more like a mini-boss, but knowing that you have such a long, treacherous climb back up through the machinery if you fail can certainly get to you. Number 12, Soul Master. The City of Tears is already a bit of a maze at times with all of its corridors and elevators. So many elevators. But the enemies weren't anything crazy up to this point. Then Team Cherry said, "What of teleporting wizards?" And everyone immediately said,
"How about no?"
Well, they didn't really want our input, it seems. We're still getting back to fighting the head wizard means fighting most of his students again. Soul Sanctum has a cool story behind it, sure, but it is filled to the brim with the biggest difficulty spiked enemies in the game, if you ask me. Good luck not dashing into a mistake for the 100th time or getting ganked by spell spammers that keep leaving the dimension right as you reach them with your nail. Number 11, Hive Knight. Full disclosure, the top 10 on this list are less area retreads than they are refights. As such, the worst true runback in Hollow Knight, if you ask me, is Hive Knight. Soul Sanctum is teleporting wizards, but you can avoid more than half of them when you unlock the shortcuts. The Hive is just one long, double damage filled platforming death trap. There is a shortcut through part of it, but you can't even break it. You have to rely on the aforementioned double damage dudes to break it for you. Throw in a bunch of extra flyboys and beedrills, and it's just a chaotic, painful, frantic sprint to get back to fighting Barry B. Benson. Whew! We made it through all the bosses that you have to run your way back to. Sadly, there are still 10 bosses left that you must fight your way back to. I put all of these at the top simply because fights take longer than platforming in almost every case. It may feel more tedious running back through the Hive or Soul Sanctum for the 5th time, but boss rushes and Colosseum trials take much longer. Number 10, the Radiance. The true final boss of Hollow Knight, the Radiance, only has one fight between you and her. Yes, it's the title character, but he's kinda already dying, so getting through him ain't that big a deal. It just takes a minute. Number 9, Oblobbles. The final boss of the second Colosseum trial, this pair of shooty lovers are the epitome of bullet hell. Getting to them isn't crazy dangerous. Trial of the Conqueror is very manageable with practice, but it still takes a good long while. Number 8, Nailmasters Oro and Mato. Actually getting to these guys is not that difficult, since most of the 9 bosses you fight before them are merely footnotes in your journey by this point. It's still 9 other bosses though, so try to take each attempt seriously. That's a lot of time lost if you fail. Number 7, Paintmaster Shio. Same song, second verse. I think most people would agree that Shio by himself isn't as difficult as the fight with his brothers, but getting back to him is a different story. Pantheon 2 is still very doable, but they're not going to simply fall over for you anymore. Number 6, Great Nail Sage Sly. We've played the bridge and we're back with verse 3. Sly is certainly the most challenging fight in Godhome up to this point, and his preamble is no different. The biggest wrench in the works here is discovering that Umu's fight is very different now. Without Quirrell to do his thing, we've got to get creative. You're basically having to learn 2 new fights in this Pantheon. Number 5, God Tamer. This one's a bit strange, since you don't have to go through Trial 3 of the Colosseum to reach her. Yes, that's required to beat the Colosseum, but she will appear in Godhome even if you've never fought her before. Personally, I find Pantheon 3, where she resides in Godhome, to be easier than Trial 3. In my opinion, even Pantheon 4 is easier than Trial 3, so we'll put her here, the unhappy medium. She really does appear in the thick of battle no matter where you find her. Number 4, Pure Vessel. Ah, the last boss to beat for that sweet 112% completion. No wonder he's way up here. After fighting through all the Dream refights and a few remaining heavy hitters from across Hallownest, you get to fight this beast. Needless to say, you need to prove yourself to get even a shot at the Vessel Untarnished. Number 3, Sisters of Battle. What could possibly be harder than getting to Pure Vessel, you ask? Well, how about the few variant bosses found exclusively in the 5th and final Pantheon? After all, you have to beat all of the other Pantheons to even unlock it. The first on that short list is the most Zen blitz you'll ever see. Yes, getting back to them once the Pantheon is unlocked isn't nearly as bad as getting through the 4th Pantheon, but plenty of people will never do that, so they can only dream about how cool it would be to face all 3 Mantis Sisters at once. Number 2, Winged Nosk. Just a bit further into P5 from the Sisters of Battle, you have this gremlin. The same reasoning for the previous entry still applies here. Nothing else to say, honestly. Bit of a lackluster number 2 spot, all things considered. Number 1, Absolute Radiance. And we finally arrived, the Light Forgotten in her prime form atop the highest and most distant of Pantheons. There is no other challenge in the game that comes even close to reaching Abzerad. 41 bosses after you draw your nail at Godhome's apex, you find yourself being eviscerated by beams of holy light. Suddenly you find yourself lying on the golden ground 40 minutes down the drain, but press on you must, young vessel. Folk in the stories that really mattered had lots of chances of turning back, only they didn't. So neither can you. Face Hallownest, fellow knight. Face it with pride. You shall overcome, and victory will be that much sweeter.